There's been a lot of talk lately about what's been happening in the States and what they're calling the Asbury revival. What people may not be conscious of is that we had a bit of a revival here in Tasmania. And I've got our resident historian, Laurie Ralston. Laurie, what happened?
We're talking about 1924, but we have to go back a couple of years earlier. We have to go back to 1910 when a Henry Ebenezer Saunders came to the Sheffield Church. When World War I started, he went back home to Queensland. 10 years later, he came back in 1924 to Sheffield, and within a few months he invited his son to be part of the pastoral team. And his father was greatly influenced by his son, who was greatly influenced by a fellow he worked with in Queensland who had got the speaking in tongues and interpretation of sons. And then after a couple of months together in Sheffield, they were working out in a couple of the outstations. It saved people that long trip into the central church on a Sunday, and so they started little chapels here, there and everywhere, and they're called outstations. So they're out a couple of outstations one Sunday morning, and all of a sudden, what we could say the Pentecostal experience kicked in, and people responded greatly. It was encouraged by the Saunders, and then it took off in the church itself, the central church, and then it took off again in another of the outstations. It took off in such a way that in their years there, and they were only there for 4 years, the membership doubled or more, and then the numbers in attendance reach 100 or more, and it becomes very much a revival, and people are enthused about it. The money in the plate is a lot more than it used to be. Membership, as I said, has grown. Baptisms are taking place, but there's a number in the church by about the 4th year that this has been taking place who were dissatisfied. There were 3 deacons who were very dissatisfied at the excesses that they were seeing. I don't have the actual details about, all I know they were excesses through Baptist eyes, as it were. Maybe laying on of hands, and maybe there might have been a bit of falling over, I don't know, but to them the conduct was becoming unseemly. But
the church was doubling in size.
Oh yes, it was. Yes.
Okay.
And enthusiastic services attracted a lot of attention. Anyway, the 3 deacons resigned, and they complained to the Baptist Association, the Baptist Union of Tasmania, and the Reverend Edward B. Woods of Burnie got involved. He wrote articles against it in the local press. He eventually, through the concerted effort of others as well, aimed to shut it down. I'm not sure about the actual details that took place, but after 4 years, both the Saunders resigned and left the church, and the revival slowly fizzled out. The 3 deacons who resigned were invited back by the Baptist churches to take their place again, and 10 years later there were still people in the church who were missing what had taken place. Dr. Damon Adams, who is a lecturer at Alpha Crucis College in Hobart and Sydney, who lectures in biblical studies and church history, wrote a lengthy article on all this, and he said that the result of this revival, there was no result. Other churches didn't catch hold of it, Baptist and non-Baptist, and no Pentecostal church was started in that part of Tasmania for the next 100 years. And he said that there's still no Pentecostal church up there. Woods and the Baptist Association and the other churches, some of the other churches, totally squashed it completely, and nothing has happened like that since. Young Saunders, Neil, went to Melbourne, and he involved himself in Baptist churches in country Victoria, and then he moved on to South Australia and became Pentecostal, because he was very greatly influenced by the Pentecostal movement. He wrote some books about Pentecostals, and he had a very good ministry, though what took place in Sheffield when he was there never took place in any of his pastorates again. And his father, Henry, he'd come from Queensland. He'd been a Baptist pastor. He was a Baptist pastor all his life. He went back to Queensland. He had a number of pastorates there, and steady pastorates. It never happened again in his ministry in Queensland, which picks up the thought in my understanding of John chapter 3 verse 8. The Spirit blows where it wills, and you will not know whence it comes or whither it goes. Now that's putting a positive spin on what took place at Sheffield, and I'm sure a lot of good took place at Sheffield, but this verse to me reinforces what took place as being part of the Spirit of God's working at that time.